Even though Election Day is still 4 days away, more than 85 million Americans have already voted, and more than 52 million of those people used mail ballots. But the Two Elections Project says that 35 million absentee ballots still remain outstanding, and the Washington Post is reporting that postal delays are slowing down delivery in several key swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio, just to name a few. Also, nearly 2 million ballots, they're outstanding in Florida alone, and 1 million in Pennsylvania, which of course are the two key states this year. All of that, it could lead to a litany of problems as states scramble to count all the votes. I want to bring in our guest, Larry Norden. He's director of the Brennan Center's Election Reform Program. All right, we're 4 days out, Larry. Are you optimistic that somehow, some way, we're going to count these ballots? Forget about the litany of lawsuits that I'm sure will come about, that at the end of the day, we're going to have a free and a fair election. Are you worried we're going to have a hot mess in our hands?
I'm optimistic. I got to say, as you pointed out at the opening, 85 million Americans have already voted. We'll probably see a few million more this weekend. So that's making me feel really good. I do think for folks that still have mail ballots in their hands or at home, they probably shouldn't be mailing them back at this point. They should be dropping them off in person or voting at their polling place. And pretty much in every state, you still have the option to do that if you've asked for a mail ballot and you haven't voted it yet.
You know, I want to play an exchange from earlier this year when obviously the Postal Service, and more specifically the Postmaster General, became a focus when in the middle of election year we all of a sudden decided it'd be wise to cut services. This is Louis DeJoy being questioned by Senator Romney about what our expectations should be of the post office right around now.
If people vote within 7 days of election, are they highly confident? Are you highly confident that those ballots would then be received?
Extremely highly confident. We will scour every plant the day, each night leading up to Election Day.
Well, Larry, is he full of it, or will the post office, are they really equipped, assuming people sent in their ballots as the hypothetical was even a couple of days ago, even though you're allowed in many places as long as it's postmarked by Election Day, are they going to get there?
Yeah, at this point, I wouldn't be putting my ballot in the mailbox anymore. First of all, in most states, you actually the ballot has to be received by Election Day. There's still some outstanding questions in a couple of states about whether it's going to be postmarked by Election Day or in by Election Day. And personally, I wouldn't risk it. I would drop that ballot off myself. And in virtually every state, you have options to do that. Or I would just show up at the polling place or during early voting to vote in person.
Unfortunately, I have no doubt that we're going to be hearing in a matter of days about this rampant fraud that's going on in our electoral process. I suspect my president will be leading the charge on this. You guys have investigated this, every which way possible. Can we definitively say for our audience that there is no such thing as massive voter fraud in the United States? If it happens, it's on such a limited basis, it really is not going to skew an election.
Yeah. It is exceptionally rare voter fraud. I want to be really clear on that. The Brennan Center has studied this. The Conservative Heritage Foundation has put out studies on this, and the chances of somebody committing voter fraud are less than the chances of getting struck by lightning. I don't want to say it never happens, but it is exceptionally rare, and certainly it doesn't happen at the level that could impact anything like a presidential election.
I think for many people, Larry, we've gotten a crash course in just how different and how non-uniform voting is state to state, and not just casting the vote, but processing the vote. And I had an interview yesterday with a reporter from the New Yorker who did a deep dive into Florida, and we always think of Florida as the punch line when it comes to elections, but they've actually been tabulating, as logic would suggest you should, all the early votes coming in. Moreover, they have a system if there is a ballot that a T may not have been crossed or an envelope may not have been appropriately submitted, where they have a nonpartisan group that will refer. They give the voter then a second chance to correct his or her vote, or at least affirm which way they did cast their ballot. But that is not the same across the board here. A lot of states are going to start counting after the last vote comes in on election day. And of course, they're not going to have the returns on Tuesday night. What's your expectation as to how many states could have giant question marks Wednesday or beyond of next week?
So there are many states, Florida, you mentioned, North Carolina, Arizona, where they're counting their mail ballots now. So if anything, we may get a good number of votes earlier than we usually do in those states, because they'll have counted them up and all the early votes soon after polls close. On the other hand, there are 3 states in particular where I think we are not going to have anything close to full unofficial results on election night, and that's Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Like most states in the country, they're seeing a massive uptick in mail voting this year because of COVID, and their legislatures did not change the rules around counting mail ballots, so they're going to just start processing them right around Election Day, and it takes time.
That may not be what everybody wants, clean closure on this Tuesday night, but this is not unprecedented. Every election cycle, we have to sometime wait days here, in some cases even weeks, to get the return. Contrary to what maybe some officials, elected officials, may want to tell you, the public should not feel that if on Wednesday we don't have a clear answer who the president is or any Senate or House races that hang in the balance. That's just democracy. If we wait, we're going to get the right count and don't listen to the people who are trying to inflame the situation. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the number one job of election officials is to make sure that we have an accurate count. And in fact, we never have final official totals on election night. There are a lot of processes in place to make sure that totals are accurate. So on election night, we get unofficial results, projections that are based on partial totals. It's going to be even probably in many states take even longer this year because of the mail ballots and because of the extra time in processing. I think at the end of the day, what most Americans want is an accurate count, and they want accuracy more than they want speed. And at the end of the day, that's what they're going to get.
And finally, just a reminder, if folks requested a mail-in ballot but they didn't get it, it doesn't mean you're shut out of the system. You can still vote in person. We encourage you to do so. And anybody right now, if you got that mail-in ballot, just like Larry said, show up in person. Should they bring their mail-in ballot with them to the actual polling place? Does that help clarify it? So if there's confusion as to, oh, wait a minute, we sent you one in the mail, what should they do if they were planning to mail it in, but either they haven't sent it in yet, didn't fill it out, but they want to vote in person? What do they do with that ballot they got at home?
Yeah, again, it depends on the state. Bringing that mail ballot with you is not a bad idea. In many states, if you bring the mail ballot in with you, you will get a regular ballot as opposed to what's called a provisional ballot, where they have to check later that you haven't sent in your mail ballot. But if you want to know what you should do, again, you should call your local election official or call 866-OUR-VOTE, and they can tell you the specific rules in your state. But everybody who has asked for a mail ballot, if they haven't voted that ballot, they are entitled to vote in person, one way or another.
Larry, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, when we come back, we have seen a lot of unprecedented things over the past 4 years, including the number of administration officials and Republicans who are now turning against this president and instead supporting a Democrat, Joe Biden. After the break, one of those Republicans joins us to explain why he's forsaking his own party to vote for Biden.